The red dust of the Arizona Territory rose in swirling clouds as Billy the Kid and his companions, the regulators in all but name these days, rode down the long canyon trail toward the settlement of Dry Creek. It was the sweltering summer of 1881, and the name William H. Bonney already echoed through the frontier like the tolling of a desperate bell. His reputation, forged in the fires of the Lincoln County War, preceded him, a mixture of cold-blooded killer and the only honest man in a dishonest land. Billy, barely out of his teens but with eyes that had seen too many sunrises over fresh graves, rode point on a weary bay mare. Behind him followed his trusted inner circle, Tom O'Folliard, whose loyalty was as dependable as the sun, the quiet, lethal Charlie Baudra, and Jose Chavez y Chavez, eyes constantly scanning the high ridges, reading the land like a scripture. Their leather creaked in unison with the slow, measured steps of the horses, a sound swallowed quickly by the vast, silent desert. They were in need of fresh provisions and a dark, forgotten corner to rest. Dry Creek, a sad collection of adobe structures clustered around a single leaning saloon, seemed the place for it. But as they neared the edge of town, Billy raised a gauntleted hand, bringing the small cavalcade to an abrupt stop. A tension hung in the still, hot air, thicker than the dust. The only sign of life was a black buzzard tracing slow circles high above the cracked wooden awning of the Mercantile. "Too quiet for a place that calls itself a creek," Charlie muttered, adjusting the heavy Winchester resting in his saddle sheath. Billy dismounted, his spurs jingling softly, a dangerous music in the stillness. He walked toward the one house showing a sign of life, a meager curtain drawn across a dusty window. The rest of the town looked like it was holding its breath, every door bolted tight against the heat, and whatever fear reigned here. Just then, a figure stepped out from the deep shadow of the porch overhang. It was a young woman, no older than 20, dressed in rough calico, her face worn beyond her years by sun and sorrow. Her eyes, though swollen from weeping, met Billy's with a direct, blazing conviction that struck the outlaw more sharply than any bullet. "Clara May, that's my name, sir, and I've been waiting." "Waiting for what, ma'am?" "For trouble to ride out. I was waiting for the kid." Her voice was low and steady, lacking the fear Billy usually saw in the eyes of townspeople. Billy took off his broad-brimmed Stetson, a gesture of respect in the oppressive silence. "My father, Elias the Rock Thorne, owned the best land this side of the Pecos, small rancher, never hurt a soul, but he held his ground. Sheriff Taggart wanted it for his new rail line deal. 2 weeks ago, Taggart's dogs rode out, led by that grinning jackal, Silas the Razor Vance. They tied Pa to his own corral post and burned the barn. Then Vance put 3 rounds into him, right in front of me, just for sport." Clara paused, a single tear cutting a clean trail through the grime on her cheek. "The sheriff called it self-defense. Said Pa drew first. The judge, he's Taggart's cousin. The deputy, his man. The law here is a rope held by Taggart's own hand. You're no lawman, Billy Bonney. You're a killer. But you got a name for caring about the little man, for spitting in the eye of the big dogs. A killer, yes, ma'am. But I ain't a butcher for sport. That sheriff, he sounds like he forgot what decency even looks like. Decency ain't a word they understand, Mr. Bonney. All I want is justice, not the kind written on dusty books, the kind felt in the gut. They took my inheritance, my home, and my father. They left me this, a lifetime of hate and a witness account no one will ever believe. They left him in the sun to be an example." Billy looked away, toward his gang who were holding their rifles loosely, waiting. The scene in her words, the deliberate cruelty, the murder of an unarmed man in front of his daughter over a piece of dry dirt. It stirred the cold rage that was always dormant inside him. It reminded him of his own past, of the land barons and the corruption that had twisted his own path. "You asking me to start a war for you, Clara May? Taggart's got 30 guns in his pocket and the full support of the county seat. We got 4 men. I'm asking you to be what they whisper you are, Mr. Bonney. The only justice left in this whole dusty territory." Billy replaced his hat, pulling the brim low over his eyes. His mind was already calculating the odds, mapping the territory, weighing the lives. Survival against the code. The code won, as it usually did. "Get your things, Mom. You and your kin are leaving this town tonight. My partner Jose will see you to a safe place over the border. But you tell me everything you know first. Every man, every dog, every rut in the road they ride. I ride for justice, Clara, but I collect my price in information." Clara's rigid composure finally broke, a wave of profound, exhausted relief washing over her. As she retreated into the house to gather her meager belongings, Billy called his men closer. "Doc, ride high and find us a good lookout post, a place where we can see the whole valley and not be seen. Tom, you and Charlie grab what water and grub you can without drawing notice. Jose, you're on escort duty. Then meet us back up the ridge. We got a score to settle. A man named Silas Vance needs to learn that pride is expensive." Just as Tom O'Folliard headed for the Mercantile, a flicker of movement high on the dusty roof of the saloon caught Billy's eye. A reflection of sunlight off a piece of glass. A scope. "Hold it, Tom!" The men froze. Billy peered hard at the roofline. The scope vanished. Someone had been watching the entire exchange, and they knew now that Clara had talked to the kid. "They're not just guarding the town, boys. They're watching the witnesses. Taggart already knows we're here, and he knows why. The fight just started." The moon hung like a tarnished silver coin over the Badlands, casting sharp, skeletal shadows of the cacti across the sand. Perched on a high, rocky mesa 3 miles outside Dry Creek, Billy and his 3 remaining men, Tom, Charlie, and Doc Scurlock, huddled around a meager, smokeless fire, nursing bitter coffee brewed from alkali water. The desert's chill had replaced the day's infernal heat, and the air smelled of dry earth and gunpowder. "Taggart's got the whole town choked, boss," Tom O'Folliard reported, having completed a quick, cautious run for supplies. "Nobody talks, but the fear is thick enough to chew. They say Silas Vance is holed up at the sheriff's annex, bragging about the old man's end. He's surrounded by at least 8 hard cases. Silas Vance is the trigger, but Sheriff Harlan Taggart is the coiled snake," Doc Scurlock noted, his tone calm and analytical, a relic of his former life as a respectable man. The Doc, despite the Colt 45 on his hip, retained a strategic mind. "We hit the annex, the whole county comes down on us. The priority is intelligence. Where are the main defenses? Who are the other 2 guns that stood beside Vance?" Billy, cleaning the cylinder of his revolver, the peacemaker, with painstaking care, nodded. Clara only saw Vance, but she heard them mention another name, Smiley. A big talker, a loud laugh. She reckons he's Taggart's brother, but no proof. Now Jose is making good time getting Clara out of the territory, but we're blind until we know Taggart's hand. "I can ride in, Capitan," Charlie Bowdre offered, his face grim. His movements were always economical, no wasted gestures, just a promise of swift lethality. "I know how to look like a man with business in town, not trouble. No, too risky. Taggart knows what you look like. We need a shadow that knows the desert better than they know their own names." A faint sound of approaching hooves filtered up the mesa. They raised their rifles, but Billy lowered his quickly, recognizing the specific gait of the horse. A moment later, José Chávez y Chávez emerged from the darkness, having dropped Clara safely at the border and returned with the speed of a courier. "Capitán, the girl is safe," he said in his low Spanish accent, dismounting gracefully. "But I found things. Taggart is not just a sheriff. He's running a small army. His main headquarters is not the jail, but his ranch, the Bar T-Rail. It's 3 hours west of the town, fortified like a fortress. That's where the money, the documents, and the real muscle are kept." "And Silas Vance?" Doc asked. "Vance is still in town. He's celebrating, using the saloon as his private barroom, but he is not alone. Taggart brought in 2 men from Texas for this land grab. One is Smiley Taggart, the sheriff's cousin, not brother, a brute. The other is a renowned gun, a quiet man called Jess the Ghost Harper. They are sleeping in the annex, but spending their evenings at the Whispering Willow Saloon." Billy snapped the cylinder of his Colt shut, the metallic sound sharp and final in the night air. The plan solidified in his mind, clear as the star-studded sky. "We don't hit the Bar T-Rail first. We hit the weakness. Vance is drunk on his own cruelty, and that makes him careless. We take him and his 2 partners, and we send a message that costs Taggart 3 of his best guns. How do we get inside the saloon without turning the street into a butcher shop, Billy?" Doc questioned, sketching a map on the dirt with the butt of his knife. "We don't go through the front door. We go through the back." Billy explained the details, his voice low and intense. Tom and Charlie would create a planned, noisy diversion at the town's water trough, drawing the 2 main deputies from the saloon. Doc, silent and quick, would circle around, entering through the back alley where the whiskey barrels were stored. Billy would be right behind him. The target was to isolate Vance and his crew inside the saloon and bring them out alive, or at least with enough breath left to talk. "We need Silas Vance to confess who gave the order. Not just about Thorne, but about Taggart's whole operation. We take the snake's head, but we need the venom first." "And if they put up a fight?" Charlie asked, his hand instinctively gripping the worn wood of his Winchester. "Then you make sure that Winchester sings a sweet tune, partner, but no civilian casualties. This isn't about slaughter, it's about justice for Clara's pa." As the first sliver of dawn painted the eastern sky with hues of bruised purple and fiery orange, the small band mounted their horses. The desert air grew heavy with anticipation. The rhythmic sound of their horses' hooves was the only sound in the vast silence, a steady, measured rhythm of men riding toward the inevitable. Dry Creek was still asleep, unaware that vengeance itself was galloping toward its main street. The plan was set. They were hunting. The town of Dry Creek felt like an oven beneath the midday sun. The air was thick with the scent of stale beer, coal smoke, and dry horse manure. The 3 men, Vance, Smiley Taggart, and Jess Harper, were inside the Whispering Willow Saloon, enjoying a midday game of faro, their laughter harsh and metallic against the general silence. They felt safe. The sheriff's 2 main deputies were posted outside, and the town was too terrified to speak of the new arrivals on the mesa. The operation began with a small, perfectly timed chaos. A sudden, loud commotion erupted near the well and the livery stable. Tom O'Folliard, having secured a loose cart, deliberately ran his horse into a stack of empty whiskey barrels, followed by a theatrical yell and a single well-placed shot into the air. "Thieving bastards! My water stores!" Tom roared, drawing the immediate attention of the deputies guarding the saloon entrance. The 2 lawmen, bored and complacent, sprinted toward the noise, leaving the front door of the saloon unguarded. That was the signal. Doc Scurlock moved first, a dark blur slipping through the back alley, his movements quiet as a panther. He reached the rear entrance of the saloon, a warped wooden door leading to the kitchen, and flattened himself against the adobe wall, the hot plaster rough against his cheek. Billy followed, his Colt .45 drawn and held low against his thigh, the heavy ivory grip reassuring in his sweaty palm. Doc kicked the door in with brutal force. It crashed inward, splintering the frame and startling the cook, who was nursing a hangover over a platter of half-cooked beans. Doc silenced him with a quick gesture, then moved into the main room. The air in the saloon was hazy with smoke and smelled of sour mash. Silas Vance, Smiley, and Harper had spun their chairs around, their hands instinctively reaching for their belts. Billy stepped through the doorway, his silhouette framed by the harsh midday sun. "Gentlemen," Billy's voice cut through the momentary silence, sharp and clear. "The game is over." Silas Vance, a man with a cruel, thin mustache and a perpetually sneering lip, recognized Billy instantly. His face, flushed red from whiskey, went pale as chalk. "The kid! Don't be a fool, Bonnie. Taggart will have your head." "Taggart's problems are stacking up fast, Vance. Right now, your biggest trouble is me, and I didn't ride all this way through the desert just to talk." Smiley Taggart, a mountain of a man with the Smiley nickname being a truly dark jest, was faster on the draw. His hand went for the huge Schofield revolver holstered on his hip. But Charlie Beaudre, who had circled back and now stood positioned in the darkened doorway of the kitchen, was faster still.